Hello and welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to dive into one of the most mysterious artifacts in history, the Shroud of Turin. Recent discoveries have unveiled an astonishing new evidence that left scientists speechless. So let's explore these groundbreaking findings together.
PhD knows a lot about a little, ladies and gentlemen. The little I know a lot about is the death, burial, execution, and resurrection of Jesus. And so naturally, I want to follow wherever the evidence leads. And in doing my study, the shroud kept coming up. And what people don't realize is the Shroud of Turin is the most studied archaeological artifact in the world. There is not a close second. And so when we talk about this finding, we're not talking about just a group of theologians or Bible scholars who want it to be true. We're talking about the most ardent skeptics who now say this is indeed the burial linen cloth of Jesus of Nazareth. And so if I'm wanting to follow the evidence, I couldn't avoid it. So I've gone truly, Eric, from a skeptic of the shroud to a full believer. I think it's a slam dunk. I believe this is indeed the burial shroud of Jesus that the Gospels all four tell us about.
Yeah, and it's amazing that this is happening now at this point in history, in these tumultuous times, Jeremiah. And we've got obviously the dating it back 2,000 years to the time of Christ, but also some other breaking news you shared with me off camera that there is evidence in the shroud of trauma. To the person depicted in the shroud.
Right. So there's two breaking news items. Number one is the wide-angle X-ray scattering imaging. This is by the Crystallography National Research Council. These are not a bunch of theologians. So they use wide-angle analysis, and they see that the linen fibers from the shroud are not 700 years old. They're 2,000 years old. And that has rocked the scientific world, so much so that the most ardent skeptics now believe we have the genuine article with the Shroud of Turin. Secondly, to your point about the blood analysis, hematology, when you look at the shroud in person, and I would encourage everyone to look at it, the thing that strikes you the most is the blood. There's blood all over the Shroud of Turin, pints of blood, and it's red. And what we know from the latest finding is there is huge amounts of ferritin, that's organ failure, creatinine, bilirubin is released, which causes the blood to stay red. Normally, with human blood, it turns a real dark brown or black on a linen sheet. But if the liver secretes bilirubin because you're under so much trauma when you're dying, it stays stamped in red. And so the two huge findings that have come out, to summarize, it's 2,000 years old, based on the Waxis X-ray scattering. And number two, the blood report shows us that the way the crucified man died in the Shroud of Turin is consistent with everything we read in Matthew 27, Mark 15, Luke 23, and John 19 and 20.
Wow. And you lay out 5 reasons why you think the shroud is the real deal. Can you break those down?
Absolutely. Number one, it's, as we mentioned, it's the most studied archaeological artifact in the world. There is not a close second. And so when we look at the shroud, when you look at the numismatics, the study of the coins, the textile, the archaeological, hematological, historical data, they all exhibit verisimilitude. That's an awesome word, with the world of Jesus. That's a Latin term, verisimilitude. It means it's very similar to what we would expect to find in the first century in the time of Jesus. What do I mean by that? Well, if you and I were trying to make up a religion or make up a shroud 700 years ago, we wouldn't know things about 13 centuries prior in Jerusalem. We wouldn't know what people looked like. We wouldn't know exactly what crucifixion victims were like. If we wanted to make it up, if the Shroud of Turin was a hoax, it would not look like the shroud that we have.
Yeah.
And so that's a strong point, which led me to believe. And then secondly, to your point, I always thought it was a Catholic relic. I grew up very, very happily, and I still am an evangelical Christian. And so I was really careful. Will people make this an object of worship? And that's a big question I get. Like, does this break the second commandment? Well, no, it doesn't, because the second commandment forbids us from worshiping graven images that are man-made. I don't think the shroud is man-made.
Wow.
The shroud is a miracle, and I'm not worshiping it. I'm doing what John 20 really shows me that Peter and John did. They saw the shroud linen in the empty tomb. They believed in Jesus, and they ran to tell people about Christ. That's what the shroud causes me to do.
Yeah, we've got
So let's kind of dive into like the history of it, because I know I like to do a lot of my research. So I pulled up some more video content about where the shroud came from. So let's kind of look at this real quick. and then we'll dive into the DNA of what they found in his blood. Pause this. All right. There we go.
New at all, the world of science has been shaken to its core after some recent discoveries. Researchers have stumbled upon something so incredible about the Shroud of Turin, it challenges our very understanding of history and faith. Make sure to stick around right until the end because I'll be revealing a new discovery that's guaranteed to shock you. Let's start with what we already know about the Shroud of Turin. It was in 1988 that a carbon dating test nullified the numerous hardcore evidence that pointed towards the Shroud of Turin being real. The origin of the shroud had always been its Achilles heel, and the carbon dating took advantage of this very aspect. Everything people had believed about the Shroud of Turin had been destroyed by the results published by the said test. The results pointed to a linen dating between 1260 and 1390 AD, seemingly the fate of the shroud's authenticity. The media portrayed the situation as a clash between hard science and heartfelt faith, with proponents of scientific evidence on one side and emotionally driven believers on the other. However, some new breathtaking evidence has come to the forefront, evidence that supports the authenticity of the Shroud of Turin that is too strong to ignore. What is this great discovery that defies science? This is where it starts to get really interesting. The infamous Shroud of Turin resides in the charming city of Turin, Italy, since 1578 in the royal chapel of the Cathedral of Turin. I know what you're thinking. Where was the shroud before it reached Italy? Legend has it that the shroud emerged for the first time in Liry, France during the 1350s. The widow of the valiant French king Geoffrey de Charny revealed this divine relic to the world, displaying it with solemn reverence in a local church nestled in the diocese of Troyes. Now, here's where the mystery deepens, my friends. Nobody knows how or when de Charny got his hands on the shroud, nor where it was during the 1300 intervening years since Christ's burial outside Jerusalem. However, one popular tradition holds that the shroud was brought to France by a knight returning from the Crusades. According to this story, the knight found the shroud in the Holy Land and brought it back to France as a souvenir. However, there's no historical evidence to support this claim. The Shroud of Turin didn't have a home for many years as it was moved several times throughout its history. Finally, it was taken to Chambéry, France in 1532, and then finally to Turin, Italy, to its forever home in 1578. It has remained in Turin ever since, with the exception of World War II, when it was moved for safekeeping. The Shroud of Turin has captivated the hearts of believers worldwide who fervently see it as the sacred burial cloth of Jesus Christ himself. This cloth, a grand 14 feet in length and 3 feet wide, bears the faint, haunting images of a nude, bloodied, crucified man, captured in the throes of death, visible from both the back and the front. But what makes the Shroud of Turin so controversial? Here's where things start to get really shocking. The reddish-brown stains on the shroud shockingly correspond to the wounds that the New Testament of the Bible says were inflicted on Jesus during his flogging and crucifixion, including the spear wound on his right side. Quite a spectacle, wouldn't you say? However, there's more to this mysterious artifact. The man in the shroud is not just a realistic depiction, but anatomically flawless down to the smallest detail. This is the unanimous opinion of medical experts who have studied the shroud for a century. Isabel Pidzek, a world-renowned expert in figurative draftsmanship, agrees. She says that the shroud is the most anatomically correct image of a human being ever made. The recent evidence of the Shroud of Turin is so compelling that it's hard to believe anyone with an open mind could deny it. Did you know that the research on the shroud didn't end with carbon dating in 1988? Instead, it became the most researched artifact in history. Scientists worked their brains off to find a way to discredit the report made by carbon dating. Years and years of research went into this, and finally they found something unbelievable. Science came to a conclusion that the image shown in the shroud was an impossible image, one that cannot be replicated. One of the many reasons is that the image on the shroud had to be caused by a mysterious burst of light or electromagnetic radiation. If you didn't know, the shroud was actually wrapped around a real body that simply dematerialized without disturbing the perfectly formed blood clots on the cloth. This could only happen through an event like the resurrection, as described in the Gospels. As the Gospel states, the resurrection freed Jesus' body from material constraints. But what about the carbon dating that challenged the shroud's authenticity? It has come to life that this result was flawed. How so? this can get really shocking. It took a long time to reveal the actual raw data from the carbon dating tests on the shroud. Surprisingly, these once decisive tests have lost their firm ground, as historical research now suggests that the shroud should actually belong to the Middle Ages. However, this is only the tip of the iceberg. To further discredit the carbon dating test, modern dating tests have emerged which pinpoint to an amazing revelation. The origin of the linen cloth pinpoints to the 1st century, meaning the Shroud of Turin must belong to Jesus Christ. However, something even more shocking has just been announced. Scientists and nuclear engineers want to conduct a fresh round of carbon dating. Many of you may think that allowing another testing would be beneficial in proving the authenticity of the shroud, but that's where you're mistaken. Did you know that the carbon dating done in 1988 needed 7 samples from the shroud? However, the scientists settled for a single sample that was divided into 3 pieces. Here's where the problem arises. The Shroud of Turin has been contaminated by carbon-14 from the last test. Do you think that the Catholic Church will let scientists further destroy the shroud? Definitely not. Because a new sample means taking 7 new samples, which can further deteriorate the shroud. A risk not worth taking. Other non-destructive methods like wide-angle X-ray scattering and many other dating tests have already reaffirmed the fact that the shroud actually dates back to the 1st century. So the question arises, why push for an additional...
I'm going to pause it right there. Have you guys noticed the reflection of his face, like it's 3-dimensional? It actually is 3-dimensional. This technology did not exist back 2,000 years ago, guys. This is proof of his resurrection. He actually, that's proof that it was very powerful light that was irradiating from his body, that came out from where he was laying down forward, and it's all 3-dimensional. So this is amazing. Keep playing here for a second.
Carbon dating when other non-destructive methods offer more accuracy and less susceptibility to contamination? Indeed, the evidence supporting the shroud's authenticity is nothing short of remarkable. The enigmatic image imprinted on the 4-meter-long cloth has confounded science with its impossible features that cannot be replicated ever. This high-resolution photographic negative 3D image, attributed to a finely tuned burst of electromagnetic radiation from the body itself, stands as a testament to a profound, perhaps supernatural event, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Extensive research by chemists and physicists have left them perplexed, unable to explain how the body mysteriously disappeared, leaving behind only an impossibly faint image on the cloth. This elusive image appears to be the result of a burst of light, a phenomenon that scientists have found capable of reproducing the unique discoloration on the microscopic linen fibers. Also, there are 99 other pieces of evidence that can prove the authenticity of the Shroud of Turin. Yep, you heard that right. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The shroud has microscopic deposits of extremely rare soil and flower pollen found in Jerusalem and only in Jerusalem. Even the chemical evidence of the blood on the cloth had something shocking to reveal. The blood had high levels of bilirubin, a chemical that is produced in a body that has suffered torture. Every evidence points towards one thing: the resurrection of Jesus Christ was real. The shroud contained a real human body, a living, breathing person who suffered actual wounds and stained the cloth with genuine blood. The shroud is a test.
I'm gonna pause that here. This is an amazing story, and I found another video connected to this. You guys are gonna be shocked. They did research on the blood, and look at what they found.
Dried blood is dead blood. Everybody knows that, all right? They can test the blood of the pharaohs, the mummies of the pharaohs, all right? There's certain things they can do. They cannot get a chromosome count by any method I'm familiar with, all right? Things keep changing. I don't profess to know everything. However, there's no way I know that you can get a chromosome count out of dead blood. You can get a DNA and some other things, but not a chromosome count, all right? That's done by living white blood cells. Now then, first of all, in this analysis, I took the blood into a laboratory in Israel. I asked one of the people I work with in antiquities, where is a good laboratory that does reliable work? And they said, such and such, such and such. I took it. I just said, please examine this blood and tell me what you can tell me about it. All right? They said, well, look, we're going to reconstitute it. We're going to put it in normal saline and keep it at body temperature for 72 hours with gentle swirling. All right, that's their business. That's great. I said, now I want to be there when you check it out. They said, fine. So I was back. They checked it out. I said, now, they said it's human blood. We can tell that. They did whatever tests they need to do. And then I said, take some of the white blood cells and put them in a growth medium and keep them at body temperature for 48 hours. And they said, well, that'll do no good because it's dead blood. I said, would you please do that for me? And they said, okay, we'll do it. So anyway, I said, I want to be there when you take it out and examine it. So I was back there. They took it out, examined it under a microscope, and the one technician called the other one over there, and then they called the boss over there, and they were talking Hebrew a mile a minute there for a little bit, and they looked at me and they said, Mr. Wyatt, this human blood only has 24 chromosomes in it. Everybody else has 46. You see, 23 from your mother, 23 from your father, 22 autosomes from your mother, 22 autosomes from your father. You get an X from your mother, you may get an X or a Y from your father, all right? This blood had 23 chromosomes from the mother's side, one Y chromosome only. You see, the child could not have developed if they hadn't had the autosomes from the mother. So all of his physical characteristics were determined by his mother's side of the family, her autosomes. His maleness was determined by this one Y that came from the source, not a human male. Then they said, this blood is alive. And then they said, whose blood is this? I said, it's the blood of your Messiah.
You see, guys, this is making my hair stand up. This is, Jesus' blood is still alive, and a number of chromosomes that they found in his body. So with the technology that is today with AI, they actually did a scanning of the trial that they found, and I'm going to show you something which is amazing. So the new discovery, this AI image appeared, and with this image the AI created, remember, because technology is advancing every day, so this AI was able to do an image of the manly figure that is in this shroud. And let's take a look at this.
The Shroud of Turin is one of the most studied and controversial artifacts in history. It is also one of the most important in the Catholic Church. The linen cloth that is said to be the burial garment of Jesus has been revered by many popes, especially in modern times. In 2010, Pope Benedict XVI spent several minutes praying in front of the shroud, and so did Pope Francis in 2015. Now, new scientific discoveries have been made, confirming that the cloth does date back to the time of Jesus. The Institute of Crystallography in Italy conducted a new X-ray dating method on a portion of the linen. The results showed the cloth is significantly older than what was found in a dating test conducted in 1988. The new results revealed the shroud is indeed a 2,000-year-old relic, as believed by Christian tradition. But this new discovery isn't the only reason why the shroud is back in the news. It has also inspired a new artificial intelligence image of Jesus. This image, based on the face of Jesus in the shroud, has gone viral across social media networks and matches traditional depictions. The Shroud of Turin was first discovered in 1354 and currently resides in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy.
About 4 months
Turin,
ago,
Italy. 54. Shroud of Turin was 54 and currently resides in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy. Across social media networks and
look at that. That is something else. That is incredible. Anyhow, so for those people that don't believe Jesus Christ resurrected, there's the proof right there. This is amazing. It's amazing. So I'm gonna conclude this video. So thank you for spending some time with me and kind of looking at the reaction that I was having because I haven't seen these videos. If you like some of this content that I'm producing, feel free to subscribe. And I'm going to do some more research on the past of Jesus Christ, as well as Christian, how it all started, and so on. So I'll try to get some more videos together so we can review it together. And again, subscribe, and you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and God bless.